Quick Lane Tire and Auto Center, Route 119, Homer City.
Extended hour start November 1st. It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM, AM 1160. Boy, Dr. Ralph, we needed the sunshine this morning, didn't we?
Oh, yeah. Feels good out there, Todd. Feels good. Feels warm, too.
AccuWeather says partly cloudy today early. We're going to get clouds this afternoon, maybe an afternoon thunderstorm. 70 degrees, your projected high. He is Dr. Ralph May joining us in the studio this morning as we talk some mental health topics. Our visit with Dr. Ralph May is brought to you by Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Dr. May, I was noting over the weekend, it's like people are just exhausted by all of this.
Yeah, it's a drain on everyone, and the fatigue over time mounts and kind of compounds on itself, and that's just the whole thing. It's just the classic. We talked about this, last year, pandemic fatigue. Mm-hmm. It's just people are just worn out, with all the changes, and you keep getting bombarded with the echoes of supply chain problems now because of the pandemic, unemployment, limitations in hiring. All these echoes from the pandemic are just backwashing on all of us.
They really are. There is a particularly, though, distressing effect on children.
Yeah, as we get the information in now more and more of what the pandemic has done to different people, different age groups. Just last week, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, and the Children's Hospital Association all got together and declared a national emergency in children's mental health because we're starting to see some of the impact of the pandemic. They went back into 2020. We got data from March through October 2020. And emergency room visits for 5 to 11-year-olds for mental health issues went up 24%. For adolescents, 12 to 17%. The emergency room visits went up 31% for mental health related issues. And there were a 51% increase in adolescent female suicide attempts last year as well. Wow. So we seem to be seeing this powerful impact on children and adolescents. Mm-hmm. One particularly disturbing figure, which I found hard to believe, but it's accurate, is between March and October of this year, 140,000 children lost a primary caregiver, parent or grandparent, due to COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about that. You think about the long-term impacts of that kind of loss and pain. And we're looking at, no wonder we're thinking about this as a mental health crisis because the system was overwhelmed to begin with. Let's be honest. There are not enough therapists. There are not enough inpatient beds. There's not enough outpatient capacity, which we've been fighting this for years. We're underfunded. But now the system is really overwhelmed, waiting lists and difficulty getting in and boarding at what we call boarding in the emergency rooms because you go to the emergency room for help for mental health. There's no place to go. You can sit in the emergency room for hours to days waiting on some place to go.
That has been, as you say, a long-term problem. They're not built for that. That's not why they're there.
That's not why they're there. And yet 30% of the capacity is mental health. And so we're looking at ways to try to make the system more responsive. I'm hoping, and there are some glimmers of hope, that the pandemic will bring attention to the mental health needs and that we'll get upfunded appropriately to get some more staff, more people, more therapists, more psychiatrists that can address this need more effectively. But right now, we are in a national emergency on children's mental health to add another stressor because of the pandemic.
Sure. The interesting thing to me about the way that this has unfolded over the last, coming up on 2 years now, is that in that first year, beginning in March of 2020, we did okay, really, right, but only by comparison to this year. Since the vaccine became available and people started to get out, the deaths have actually gone up, haven't they?
Correct. And I think what happens is when you're faced with an overwhelming crisis is during the short term, people tend to react together. There tends to be a coming together. There tends to be, we're in this together. We've got to deal with this crisis. We formulate a plan. We get responsive for the acute, for the immediate issue. But the longer it goes, the harder it gets to sustain the effort.
Yeah.
The more fatigue develops, the more frustration develops. And then when it starts to loosen, that's when the rebound occurs. There's a rebound that occurs. And I think we're going to see this in the suicide rate, Todd, is that the preliminary data is not out yet for pandemic year 2020. But we believe the suicide rate will fall during the pandemic year, but then rebound this year and next year. Because when you're isolated, when you're cut off, when you're shut down, a lot of people who are on the cusp of thinking about ending their life feel that things are kind of more in tune with where they are, so to speak, isolated, cut off. But as soon as that shifts, then all of the stuff that's been pent up cracks loose. And that's where we've got to start paying close attention.
Yeah, really interesting to me. Yesterday I was at a funeral, and I saw one guy shaking hands with the other, and the first guy put out his fist for a bump.
Right.
The other guy put out his hand for a shake. And he said, I don't bump. He said, I'm done with all that.
I'm done with all that.
In terms of the overall reaction to the pandemic, we've reached the point where society is saying, I'm done with all that.
We're done with it.
You say that's a danger point.
I think that is the danger point, because we want to be done with it so much that we lower our guard. We let our defensives down, and it's too soon. I mean, we're making progress. Make no mistake about it. There's a lot of hope here. There's progress being made. But we want to rush for the door too quickly. Mm-hmm. And, if you've got too many people rushing for the door too quickly, what happens? You get stampede. Yeah. And that stampede does more damage to people than the thing they're trying to get away from.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm mostly worried about. I mean, who knows? I mean, we all want to be back to normal. We all want this to be normal again. It's our natural human condition. The longer a negative thing goes, the more we just want it to be over with. But there are ways of disentangling ourselves from this progressively and carefully without rushing for the door.
All right, well, let's get into some of that, because here we are. We're entering into what will be a winter season when a lot of us will be forced indoors again after being able to get out and enjoy the outdoors a little bit. So it will become something even more acute for us. What are some of the ways that we can break free of this very, very stressed, exhausting circumstance in which we find ourselves? It's like a never-ending cycle right now.
It is. I think the most important thing, and the most important thing I've seen and I know, is that when people think about other people, when people think about their families, their friends, their community, and they think about, it's not just about me, it's about us. Mm-hmm. It's about what we do together and how we can do things together to protect each other, but at the same time enjoy one another. I don't know that it's the same as it was last year, where we all have to be on Zoom every minute, but I think we have to use good sense that if we are clustering together in close quarters, we need to protect one another a little more carefully. Now, CDC's got some guidelines coming out. They change all the time with vaccine rates, and but it still seems that when we allow appropriate distance, we stay in ventilated areas, we wear masks when we're in small areas, not necessarily outside if you're vaccinated. All these precautions make a big difference in terms of your ability to connect. Mm-hmm. I still think the most important thing psychologically we can do is not allow the fatigue of the vaccine to make us selfish. Not allow the fatigue of the vaccine to say it's about me, I want out. It's all of us are in this together. And if we can remember what it was like when it started, when we all worked together, mm-hmm. and not let the fatigue cause us to break apart, that's still going to be the best approach.
Over the course of the last 6 months, I was sharing this on our This Sunday Morning program. I've really latched on to a particular song that I play from time to time, and its title is Grace and Peace, and that's all mm-hmm. it's about. The whole song is about grace and peace, and it occurred to me that if those of us who are able to find grace and peace in this society can, right. then we should take that with us wherever we go. And for those who are struggling to find their grace and peace, maybe we could be a help to them.
I think that's the key, is that if each one of us ground ourselves and stay in that place of grace and peace, where we recognize that if we stay that way, if we can stay grounded that way, then the people who interact with us are de-escalated. De-escalation, whether we're talking about the pandemic or we're talking about just dealing with mental health crisis in general, the people who do the best de-escalation are the people that are de-escalated. Yeah. The people that can stay grounded when somebody's in your face yelling at you and say, okay, we got this, take a breath, we got this. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to react to you. I'm not fighting with you. I'm trying to understand what's going on. We got to get back from the brink here. That's what we all need to do right now, is remember that we all are in this together, that if we can just remember that this pandemic is an artificial pressure, that we can react by not allowing ourselves to get out of the zone of grace and peace. Grace and peace, centeredness, calmness, mindfulness, whatever term you want to use, spiritual terms. Spirituality is very important here. We don't talk about spirituality much, but spirituality is very important, because if you're grounded in a sense that there's more than this, that our connection to one another is key to this, then you're in a good place.
Somebody going to take a swing at you, don't swing back. We started this segment, we were talking about kids and mental health. Moms, dads, grandparents, what are some of the things that they can do to help their kids in this really, really troubling time?
The more you can make things normal for them, and normal, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be back to normal, but normal in terms of routines, time together. You know, one of the gifts the pandemic gave us is time with our families. And I'm afraid that we're going to lose that again. You know, we got used to being able to be with one another physically, you know, not on us, and kids and their parents and their grandparents spent more time together. We need to not lose that. And predictability and stability, again, get back to the basic point. The parent, the caretaker has to take care of themselves, not in a selfish way, but in a role modeling way. The way you teach your kids is how you act, not just what you say, but do you walk the walk, right? If you're saying calm down, calm down, calm down, and the guy on the street at the red light, you're yelling at him, well, the kid's in the back seat, the kid's learning to yell at the guy at the red light who's not moving. You know, so it's how you are that teaches, not just what you say.
But that guy drives me crazy.
It drives me crazy too. You know, I'm going to get out of the car and just, and we all get there, right? You know, what you say to yourself in your head when you're there is really important. Like I say something like, how big a deal really is this, Ralph? You know, like, are you going to, my old boss had a saying, would you die on this hill? Is it that worth it? You know, and we got to all get back from the brink and say, wait a second here. What is really important here? Stopped at the red light and not pulling out as fast as I want, or the fact that I have time with my kids and we're basically okay?
2 minutes from now, it's not going to matter.
No, it's not.
All right, Dr. Ralph, you've been good for us here today. I appreciate your coming in. We have to do this more often.
Always good to have me. I always like to be here, so it's good.
It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS, 101.1 FM, AM 1160.